habari gani, karibuni, asanteni. Thank you all for being with us today. The name is Nduko. I am the host on Kumbukeni. Kumbukeni is the place where we reach back to remember and take what was left for us by our ancestors as we reconnect to our culture so that we can use it to move forward towards our liberation. Today I'm joined by Brother Idris, an African, MwanaUbuntu, today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But even more than that, I will let him introduce himself in a minute. All right, so thank you very much, Idris, for joining us. Please introduce yourself to the community.
Thank you for having me. You actually said everything they need to know. I'm just an African, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Nothing more, nothing less. So I'm just a human being like everybody else. What can I say about today? I mean, it's. I think this topic that you've brought up today is long overdue. It's something we all need to try and wrap our heads around, because we may not understand it, but it permeates every aspect of our existence. And much of the conflict or the challenges, the conundrum that African development has been having actually emanates from this particular topic that you're trying to discuss today. So when you're ready, take it away and let's do what we do and try and unpack this.
Yes. As a critical thinker yourself, this is where we're going to start. So what got you? What inspired you? What triggered? And we try to stay away from that word now because it's so overused and misused. But what sparked that? What was that moment where you sat and said, we've got to think differently. We've got to move away from the word leader. We've got to focus on this. And why did you find problem with leader, the use of leader, or the practice of raising our children, and especially in our community, to believe that the leader is the goal to aspire to, and instead embrace ethical, critical thinking as the goal to aspire to?
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
It's been a process. It's not something that just happened once. But I need to take you back to 1973. My mother just returned me to Nigeria. She left the UK. She got to meet my father. And then I was already in secondary school in London, and then they had to find another secondary school for me. This school was called Agosa Grammar School. Now, while I was there, just the first few months I was there, what happened was the school principal and the teachers brought the whole school out onto the roads, on both sides of the roads. And I'm thinking, why is school being disrupted? Why are we all going outside? And we were given flags. The flag I had, which everybody else had, I didn't know at the time, but it was for, I think, Togo, for a country called Togo. And we were instructed, virtually compelled, to wave this flag when we saw a cascade of black vehicles, limousines passing by. Now, these vehicles zoomed past. I'm talking about they zoomed past. And we had to pretend like we were all joyous and happy kids and waving flags. The person in that vehicle was one Ayadim at the time, okay? And so I was only about 12, 13.
And please,
and I was thinking,
please explain to the community who that is. Yes, please.
He was a very notorious president. He was a very vicious and brutal president in a country called Togo. Yeah. His history is not something. His history is comparable to Mobutu, if you know Mobutu. And as usual, these were puppets and muppets planted there by the oppressors. So, but that triggered my first thinking. I was like, I'm a kid, and I'm thinking, what was this for? Why was our sovereignty abused? Why was our freedom, captured and reclaimed and given to this person who virtually didn't even really notice us? Mm-hmm. All they did was spit dust on us. Because the major road, yes, some parts are tarred, but some is dusty, and we're all covered in dust.
I remember those African roads, yes.
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 And it never stopped. the more, as I was growing up and I was seeing people, and one that actually caught me was way back in 1989, 89, I think it was. I had to go to Sintra, a place called Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was a postgraduate student in international relations. And then in here were future leaders, supposed future leaders, who were in this massive castle with some maze. I think that's what you call it, those gardens that, have all those things. And one thing is, I was looking at all these people, they were not serious. They were just there for the status, the freebies, especially the freebies. They get put in a nice room, hotel, food, everything you can think of, all paid expenses. And I thought, is this academia and is this leadership? I really don't want to be a part of this. So fortunately for me, a few years later, I found my way out through IT. But that's a whole different story. But like I said, it was a process. But it started from that moment when Yarimad, could I say, splashed dust all over us, And I never stopped thinking about it. And, as you get older and you get more knowledgeable, you start to question these things and you realize there must be a better way. This leadership thing is a handed down thing. It's a Eurocentric concept that was handed down, because when I was in, I was once preparing for research methods for the so-called PhD, which I abandoned. And one of the books I read, they were talking about, I think, the Kalahari Bushmen. And they explained a researcher had gone there to do some research, and he was asking somebody something. And then the Kalahari Bushman said, you have to wait, I have to come back. He left, came back with a group of people. And the researcher got a bit irritated, thinking, why? I'm asking you. He said, no, we don't make decisions on our own. It's a group decision thing. You see? And the researcher, the European researcher, had a hard time grasping that concept. And that's why you see the notion of ethical critical thinkers came in. Because if you're going to have a council of elders as a system of governance, each one has to have some kind of ethical critical thinking capabilities. It's ethical in a sense because, as you show, it involves certain principles, like I think you show it to them later. They'll see it anyway.
Yes.
That's basically, in a nutshell, all the things that has brought me to this point in time and said, no, somebody has to take a closer look at this concept of leadership. And that's what we're doing here.
Yes. So when I first saw the information that we're going to go through today, like I said to you, it felt like I was reading something I had written, not because you were saying everything I was thinking that we need to move towards. And it brought such relief to me because I have been struggling to explain these things to our people in the last 2 years, lost some good friends because they just don't get it. So let's go through them one by one. Let's go through these traits that you're going to use to compare the leader versus the ethical critical thinker, and to show why we need to move away from this concept, this European concept. And maybe you can explain why it is a European concept of leadership and move to a more African-centered concept of ethical critical thinking. And before you even explain why you think it's, and maybe you get to do it when we talk about the first trait, and we'll do that. So when I think about, just as I was saying to you right now, the European concept of leadership and the African-centered concept of ethical critical thinking, immediately in my head came going to church, going to boarding school, which both boarding schools I went to were Catholic, and every other institution, including the jobs that I belong to, where I was told, you cannot ask questions. You cannot question this. You cannot, in Christianity, they called it blasphemy. In Islam too, right? You're given a fatwa if you question Muhammad. Muhammad is the word and you cannot question. In the employment section, it's follow the chain of command. You cannot go beyond this and this and that. You cannot think outside the box, which critical thinking calls for. So as I even ask you to talk, as we get ready to start talking about each, my brain is triggering these moments of dysfunction in society where this concept of leadership and following bureaucracy comes to mind, has kept us from being grounded in our ethical, critical thinking selves, which is what our human nature is. We question everything. So let's start with the first one. You say the leader is one who glorifies, exalts him or herself knowingly, unknowingly feeding off the upward surge of energy that emanates from those he or she leads. By virtue of the construct of the notion of leadership, the leader needs the attention, the idolization, the adoration, the energy, the servitude and conscript of those that he, she leads, and therefore elevates his, herself above those it deems to be leading. And I like that you use that it there. The leader perceives his, her starting point based on hierarchical structures. The ethical, critical thinker, on the other hand, is one who has no need for elevations, glorifications, adornments, servitude, no likes, nor likes, dislikes, and is one who perceives his or her own starting and end point of existence and reasoning as simply a human being, with all things being symbiotic, natural, and equal. Talk about that, Idris.
Okay. To answer this, I need to say something about what you just said above. Think of this. In order to have a concussion, you need a brain. You can't have a concussion before you get a brain, okay? Now, for those who are religious, you need to ask, why do you have a brain? If you've been told not to think, there must be something inadequate about you, the person, if you fall or buy into that concept that you should not question. Because you've got a brain. The purpose of the brain is that.
Yes.
I mean, you don't go to a doctor if you're well. You go to a doctor if you're ill, right? You have a need for a doctor if you're ill.
Mm-hmm.
It's a contradiction to say, I shouldn't question. It makes no sense. Because why do you have a brain? Who gave you the brain? The creator. Okay? Now, hopefully that answers, it puts what you said earlier on in proper perspective.
100% does.
For those who claim to be religious, you need to knock yourself on the head and think. Use your brain. That's why you've got one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now let's get back to this one. I'll have to answer this in a roundabout fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Let me throw a question to everybody listening as well as yourself. Where have you seen a leader that doesn't do this, that's mentioned here? Please give me an example, because if there is one, I haven't seen it. So which leader has never glorified itself, never fed off the upsurge of energy of others? Idolization, adoration, servitude especially, because the leader needs servitude in order to be a leader in the first place. So it's embedded, it's innate in the concept. So if anybody can point to a leader, I respect Malcolm, I respect Sankara, but they also had these same traits.
I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking, as you were asking that question, I was eliminating all of them. I went through Malcolm. I was like, yeah, he has moments. Dr. King, he has moments. Sankara, I went to Lumumba as well. Yes, go on. And Traore today. Yes.
They're all playing different fields. But at the end of the day, they need to have all of those things in order to sustain themselves in those positions. Now, contrast that to what I said about the ethical critical thinker. The ethical critical thinker realizes I may be performing a function or role, but I'm no different from you. I may be the president today. It's a role. Somebody's going to replace me tomorrow. So I can go into such a role and do the best I can. But an ethical critical thinker realizes that one man is not an island. You need a certain kind of teaming and teamwork to function and to get the results you need. As an individual, you're bound to be compromised if you try to do it solo. But just to before we move on to the second point, this first point, if there's anybody in the audience that can show me one person that's been in a leadership role, even if it's a religious leader, they're worse. Point me that person, and then also give me the time to analyze that person, and then we'll take it from there, and then I'll be convinced that I am wrong.
And we will invite the audience in the chat later on in the comments. Please bring up names if you believe that there are certain people who've fallen into the leadership role who do not fit this description that Brother Idris has given us, who are more leaning towards the ethical critical thinker way of doing things than the leadership way of doing things. So yes, I agree with you. Put the challenge out there, Brother Idris, and let them bring the names, and we can look at them. So moving on to the second one, you say the leader is one who thinks, speaks, cares, acts largely, indulging endlessly in the first person point of view. That is, I. Their concern is largely their own well-being. They sometimes cater for those around them because they have a need for backing, support from those around them in order to achieve their needs. Thus, often when the I does not get its way, he or she resorts to dictatorial emotional outbursts as a mechanism for expressing their frustration and in trying to restore, maintain their will over those they lead. The ethical critical thinker is one who thinks, speaks, cares, acts in the third person objective narrative, that is, the we, and is concerned beyond self, and as he, she understands that it is natural to be concerned for others in a similar way that one is concerned for self. Because the ECT, the ethical critical thinker, is focused on and entrenched in the we, he or she has no need for dictatorial emotional outburst, but rather simply automatically employs abstention where needed. So I will say, as I read this, even I, who's moving towards the ethical critical thinker, found fault in myself that I still have leadership traits that make me have certain outbursts at time and not humble myself. So please speak on this one.
Well, think about it. Whenever you do see leaders, so-called leaders, the I is first. Mm-hmm. But they fail to realize what exactly are they in leadership for. Mm-hmm. It's not for the I, it's for the populace. And the populace is not one, it's not singular. It's the we. Yeah. Now, if you go into a concept of a we with an I mentality, you'll never do anything positive or productive for the we, because you're concerned about just yourself and your immediate environment. Like I pointed out, don't get me wrong, even ethical critical thinkers get their moments where things can be rough. They're not getting the results they want. But instead of doing a Hitler and being dictatorial, mm-hmm. or Mobutu, what these people do is you just retreat, you abstain, because you can't, look, I can take you to a book. I can show you a book and give you a book, but I can't compel you to read that book.
It's true.
The part I can do, I do. But when ethical critical thinkers are together, because they all think for the we, they get results. They don't get individual. So it's least likely you're even going to get frustrated. But when you're dealing with people who think for the I, and you're just the one who's thinking of the we, you will get those moments. And in those moments, the ethical critical thinker goes into abstention. That is, hey, they say, if you can't beat them, join them. But we say, no, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. If you can't beat them and you don't have to join them, you can leave them alone.
Leave them.
You see it? So that's what point 2 is really explaining here.
I like that. And I like that you explained that, because as we move away from the majority mindset of leadership and we are in communication with these people as we think critically, we ground ourselves in ethical critical thinking. And I like that ethical, and we can talk about it at the end. Why ethical? What's the importance of having the ethical accompanying the critical thinker? I agree. The moments that I'm thinking about now where I was frustrated was because the people were not seeing the we. So I'm glad you made that distinction for those of us who are going to be grounding ourselves in ethical critical thinking, so that when we encounter those moments of frustration, we understand why it's happening, and it makes it easier to abstain and step away, knowing that we're doing it for the better good. So thank you for making that clarification. We move on to the third one. You say that a leader is one who may feign it, but in truth often lacks pride, integrity, and dignity, PID, and feeds off of the influence he or she wields to sustain the I-driven related meaningful connections in order to exploit virtue-based practices to achieve his or her varied self-elevation objectives. Because of his or her lack of the PID, the pride, integrity, and dignity, in its true sense, pending the right conditions, they are often prone to compromise. Oh, that's not good. And it's interesting as I go through these traits, I'm seeing African presidents. It's as if they are the poster child for what you're talking about. But you say the ethical critical thinker in the fourth trait is one who adheres. Wait, did I skip the third trait? Yes, I did. Sorry. Yes, let's go back to the third trait. I did skip the third trait. So the third trait, sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
The leader is one who leads a flock to the edge of a cliff, and then when the I need arises, nudges the flock over, simply because she harbors motives that require steering the flock down a designated pathway to achieve designated ends. A major tool in the arsenal of tool sets that the leader thrives on is the concept of servitude, which, when deemed appropriate, often needs to be accompanied by subjugation. An ethical critical thinker is one that has no need, desire for servitude or subjugation, as all interactions are based on humanity in the natural and tainted order of ethical symbiotic relations. This conversation is bringing such healing in and hope in the way forward. You have no idea. So speak about this, please.
Well, without servitude, a leader cannot be. But the servitude factor is just one. A case in point, we all know what happened to Brother Malcolm when he stepped out of the Nation of Islam. Okay?
Good
And that scenario can occur anywhere, even in your office where you're working with your management. And what do they normally do? They put their foot down on the pedal, sort of. Subjugation comes in. Hitler, they have to subjugate you to bring you back in order. Even though you're going through a process of realization, confusion, and trying to heal yourself. But they can't let you even go through that process because they need to bring you back in line. And so, unfortunately, the whip comes out. It's like the Bible and the gun, So if we have people who are entrusted and are in positions to do things and they have this mindset, it's not going to work. I don't see how. It has never worked. I mean, for a lot of people, they don't even realize that, even Europeans, there was a time when somebody academia could write a paper, but he could never get it published. He had to give it to a bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie put his or her name on it. And then he claimed the rights to that paper. It's only in recent times that even Europeans themselves have come out of the clutches of these things, but they've transformed them from monarchy, bourgeoisie, land, lords and barons, into something more neutral and more accepting, which is the leader, which originates from religion. Okay, so we need to understand the nuances in these things, but they're all the same. And if you're going to have something that has to employ subjugation, there's no benefit or no productivity at the end of that rope. It's not possible. And unfortunately, leadership has that trait. You can't take it out of it. So the concept of saying the leadership thing can pull us as a people forward, where we're in the process of trying to lift ourselves out of the mud of Eurocentric civilization. I don't see how that's going to help us. We need something unique, something more productive. For instance, like what we're aiming at getting to, a council of elders. I hope that explains that.
It does. And, you know, as you were saying that, I was fortunate enough yesterday to sit in a friend's sociology class, and they were talking about the fathers of sociology, the grandfathers of sociology. And there was only one woman. And it brings back, and that's in Europe, where a lot of women back then, and even in the civil rights movement, who literally are the ones who came up with the ideas, their names were not mentioned, and you end up having Dr. King as the face and the name and all the other men. And we never stop to critically think, ethically critically think, and ask ourselves, why is it that in history it's all these men who did things while there were women still in existence? What happened? So thank you for pointing that out. And I guess that happens because men apparently are the leaders, right? This is the society we've been told to. Men should lead and women should follow. And we can talk about that at the end as a bonus of why that is.
I think that will have to be another day's
another whole conversation.
Yes.
But quick,
deep. That's deep.
Go ahead.
No, I said that is deep. That conversation is deep. So it's best left for another time.
All right, good. Thank you. So number 4, let's look at number 4. A leader is one who may feign it, but in truth often lacks pride, integrity, and dignity, PID, we said, and feeds off of the influence he or she wields to sustain the I-driven related meaningful connections in order to exploit virtue-based practices to achieve his or her varied self-elevation objectives. Because of his or her lack of PID in its true sense, pending the right conditions, they are often prone to compromise. The ethical critical thinker is one who adheres to his or her PID principles without compromise and thus appreciates and respects nature, creation for what it is, having the thought capacity to separate nature and its constructs from those of human constructs, and thus he or she builds virtue based on this separation. Say some more, please.
Okay. When have you ever, I shouldn't say when, we've all seen this in action. You see somebody come onto a podium in front of the mic, and he'll make these flamboyant statements, which really he doesn't even, or she doesn't even mean. And has no intention. George Bush, the terrorist, he's one, for example, has no intention of implementing or doing what he's saying. Or they come up on stage and then they steer the audience to the left while they're doing something to the right. They do it all the time. African leaders come up there, they criticize the West, but they're in bed with the West. You see, they come and sit with you, but who's sitting right next to them in another meeting? And then you're thinking, who's fooling who here? If you had pride, integrity, and dignity, you would abstain from them in the first place. You wouldn't hop on a plane so you can go see rubbing shoulders. The minute a president becomes president in any country in Africa, the first thing on his agenda is, I need to go and stand with the president of America. I need to be seen next to Obama. I need to be seen next to so-and-so. You see? And you're thinking, is that why the people really elected you?
Even brother Idris, even before they become president, they have to go get the check mark from them.
Yes. True. Very, very true. Very, very true. So we've all seen this in practice. If they really practiced pride, integrity, and dignity, they would not do none of those things. Look, I can live next to my neighbor. My neighbors have always been Europeans. I don't not need to like or dislike them to live next door to them. But in our cases, we always have to cuddle up, lick boots, kiss ass, you know? And we're so vicious to our own kind. That's the contradiction. The same person who is all softy and nicey and cuddly is extremely vicious to his own kind. And her, because many of our female leaders have the same traits, you see. So we've all seen this. So if there's anybody that can tell me otherwise, I'm all ears, but I doubt if you can. You know, but I'm all ears.
Thank you. I'm loving the fact that you're open to the challenge of anyone who thinks that your observations are not accurate. But even before when I read this and as I continue to speak with you, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing how anyone will come up with a name that is going to challenge your observations. But let's continue. Number 5, you say, this is the 5th trait. The leader is one who needs and frolics in the adornment, accolade of bulletproof vehicles. And it's funny because when I read this, the day before I had seen Ruto, the current Kenyan president, in a bulletproof vehicle.
Oh,
So this was a moment of humor for me. So even the Pope, the so-called Christian leader, bulletproof vehicles. Anyway, so the leader is one who needs and frolics in the adornment, accolade of bulletproof vehicles in order to whiz past through villages and towns that have pre-planned and orchestrated children, near naked women waving provisioned flags, singing songs and praise, adorning the streets for them as they hastily speed past the prearranged crowd in their motor cascade, splashing, leaving a trail of dust on the pre-configured and orchestrated spectators. A sad hierarchical mental emotional deficiency, derived charade that is all part of what they have amputated their own minds to perceive as official stately leadership visits between themselves. The ethical critical thinker is fully aware that in the human construct division of time, that there is only 24 hours in any given day, so the mind and effort should be on thinking outside the box. And you have in brackets while still keeping a vigil on the box, like you have to stay grounded on what your goal, your cause, your purpose is, towards the development conundrum at hand seeking real world solutions to real world problems that genuinely affect and afflict the people and society at large. Thus, jetting the globe in aircrafts made, bagged by one's own oppressor, to indulge in circus like, class hierarchical based, human construct, global summits, or whizzing past streets pre organized with flag waving and dust covered children, butt naked dancing women on both sides of the streets is the least development constructive thing to be indulging in, and as such, the ethical critical thinker abstains from such indulgences and frolic as she has no need for them. This one was big, so please say more about it.
Firstly, before I even move on, when I keep saying while still keeping a vigil on the box, I've heard a lot of so-called leaders and spokespeople and people on public podiums constantly saying throw away the box. You're a fool if you throw away the box, because that box isn't throwing you away. It's keeping an eye on you. So you need to know what that thing is doing. In order for you to think outside the box, you need to know what that thing is doing at all times. Because if not, it will come and sweep the carpet from underneath your feet. And your thinking outside the box won't even see the light of day. So you must always keep an eye, a vigil on where you're coming from. You came out of the system. A system exists. If you don't keep an eye on that system, it's going to come, because it's coming after you in the first place. So you always have to. So don't throw away the box completely. Think outside of it, but always keep a vigil on it, because you need to be alive in order to do what you want to do. And if you're not looking behind you, anything can happen. But anyway, back to this. When we started this conversation, I told you about my experience when I was about 12, 13. But this goes one further, because one needs to ask, where did these butt-naked, singing, dancing, clapping women come from? How did that construct come into place? Who advised someone to do this? And then who made it a tradition? And even that, you women who are doing this with your butt naked and singing and dancing, where's your brain? Aren't you thinking? What are you doing? The kids, I can understand. They have no choice, like when I was 13. But the mature women, somebody comes and says, we're going to the stadium, and you come naked and you start singing and clapping and dancing. The same thing in churches and houses of worship. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? Are you not thinking? They want you to pedestalize them. It makes no sense what you're doing. So if you want power, you've got to do what Sister Soldier says. You've got 360 degrees of power. Take it back. Put your butt on your naked body on strike. Say, sorry, no more. We're not doing this. If you want somebody to dance, go take off your pants and do your own dance. You see, like I said, I mean, there's 24 hours in a day. Think about it. Any constructive person, any person doing something meaningful, will not spend that time jetting around in a plane, going from place to place. Virtually all African leaders, I have still to see what, except the guy from Tanzania that didn't last. All they're doing is whizzing from country to country to country to country. Wait a minute, but you're supposed to be taking care of your own. 99%, if not 99.9% of the African leaders don't even know what life is in a village in their own country. Many of them have never stepped out of with the exception of Traore, many of them have never stepped out of their cascade of bodyguards and followers and whatever, and gone into a village and understood, I'm talking about without an artificial setting. Because if people in the village know a president is coming, obviously it's a contrived scenario. But somebody just walks into the village unannounced, without, like the president of Tanzania once did to the officers. You see, until you get people who claim to be leaders or presidents doing things like that, then you know they are truly concerned about the well-being of their people. But many of them, like the one you mentioned, that's Ruto. I hold no balance. I have never seen a miseducated Negro than him. Everything he says it's like Bill Gates and co have schooled him, cloned him, mentally indoctrinated him, that he can't even see what he's saying. He's completely lost. So he's been sedated, So those are not anything you want to go by, because those are people living in another world. They're on another planet, those ones, But the rest of them who claim they want to mean good, you need to go to the remote villages. Now ask yourself while you're there, how is it possible that there are no infrastructure here? There's no roads, no internet, no nothing. How is that possible? The development of Africa is not the cities, it's the rural areas. If you don't develop the local villages, the cities are irrelevant. They can stay dust holes. What people judge you by are your remote villages. When people are, I've seen a lot of people come from Africa. They come here. When they see the remote villages here, they go, wow. That's the first thing they see. They don't go wow about the cities, huh? They go wow about the outskirts. And that tells you something. It's the outskirts that actually is your indice for development. Hopefully that clears that.
Yes, it does. And as you say this, because we've been so miseducated, right? We fall for this leader, but we actually have had some ethical thinkers that unfortunately could not fulfill their ethical thinking, their capacity, because they believed in this leadership model. And as you say that, with this trait, I see Dr. King, I see Malcolm, I see Thomas Sankara, and Walter Rodney. All four of them were very keen on moving beyond their elite status and sitting with the people, going into the local areas. And Dr. King literally moved and got a home in the hood so that he could understand what the problems were.
Can we keep King out of it? He has a history that
I know, but I'm trying to get us to the point where we actually give some grace as we continue to educate, that just because you've been falling for this lie does not mean that you cannot change now and embrace this way. So Dr. King could have, if he sat with, for example, you and I in a conference like the one we have coming up,
I'm not sure about that, because you need to know his background. You need to know his history.
So we can, again, I'm just saying, we're not focusing on Dr. King, the person. We're focusing on the fact that you who has been miseducated has a chance to move away from that and embrace ethical, critical thinking is the point. And we see some instances in our history where some people may have had the opportunity to do that, but mostly Like the one who seriously did it, Walter Rodney, Thomas Sankara, and Malcolm X. So
Yeah.
yes, I will agree with you. Moving on to the sixth trait, and let's get it. All right, we have that up. You can see it.
Yeah.
All right, great. So the leader, you say the leader is one who romanticizes and finds comfort in titles, accolades, elevation, and spends a large chunk of his or her time looking in the mirror, adjusting the blue suit or glittery dress he or she is wearing. That's, first of all, before I go to six, I meant to say this and I got distracted by the Dr. King conversation.
Okay.
I was so happy. And this is something I want to say because I want those, especially those on the continent, my brothers and sisters on our motherland, for you to know who this person is. I was so happy when I saw Sister Soldier mentioned in your PDF. I was like, yes, yes. Sister Soldier, for those of you who don't know, the name is Sistah. The second name is Souljah. Look her up on YouTube. You will find out who she is. I don't need to describe who she is. Just go enter Sistah, and the last name is Souljah. She does not get the flowers that she needs to get, and she has consistently, despite not getting the flowers, continued to be who she is. So moving on. Number 6, the leader is one who romanticizes and finds comfort in titles, accolades, elevation, and spends a large chunk of his or her time looking in the mirror, adjusting the blue suit or glittery dress he or she is wearing. Thus, being overly concerned about how to fit in while at the summit, ballroom, meeting, gala, party, invite, or event to be attended in some fantasy cocooned integrationists' world they have contributed to you and misleadingly amputated their own minds into constructing for themselves a human construct, classism-based system. The ethical critical thinker is one that spends the chunk of his or her time constantly thinking, testing, refining, restructuring, building, constructing, retesting, analyzing, implementing solutions and systems to address real world, big, small challenges encountered daily. Thus, the ethical critical thinker cares not for titles, accolades, elevations, and in the mind of an ethical critical thinker, a role is simply just that, a role subject to a given expiry time frame. Now, Brother Idris, I have gotten in trouble with this one because I tell people, I don't want to hear you telling me you're president, this and that, because I'm not going to call you honorable until you show me what we're honoring you for. I'm not going to play this game of titles that mean nothing. You're a human being just like me. You put your pants in one leg at a time just like me. Show me through your action how I need to honor or respect you, not through this title that means nothing to me. Your doctorate means nothing to me if you're not doing something to help community. So speak more on this one.
Well, you said it right there. But think about it. How many times have you not seen all these people quoting their qualifications or like the honorable thing? It's just a way of brainwashing people into servitude. They will say, "Oh, I'm honorable minister," but you just stole $1 million. What's honorable about that? I'm honorable this. But wait a minute, you just siphoned into a secret bank account somewhere else billions. You see, because of classism, what happened is the thief had to construct a strategy of how to steal and make it look noble. And classism embeds all these titles and gives the thief the window to appear, to create an appearance of nobility, when in truth, it's nothing but a thief. Now, the nobility came from something that's traditional, it's called classism, okay? Because prior to that, they were doing this from the monarchs to the barons to the landowners, all of these things, they were doing it. They were all criminals, all of them, no exception. But criminals need a way to perfect their art and to make it acceptable. And titles, accolades, all of these things are the tools that they use to brainwash the masses into buying into this hogwash. You know, it's ridiculous. I can't even. When I see it, people are like, oh, I'm excellency this, I'm honorable this. I'm like, whoa, slow down. Your bank account, that foreign one especially. How did you get this money? None of you have talent. None of you have skills.
Exactly.
You don't have skills. You may have 10, 20 titles, but I give you a computer, you fumble. You know, and I'm like, what productivity are you producing for the people? If you really are so desperate and you need to be called honorable, don't you look in the mirror and realize there must be something wrong with you mentally and emotionally? If you really need that to feel like you are somebody, that means you're suffering from a mental and emotional inadequate state of being. You know, so there's no two way about it. Unfortunately, there's a history, the classism thing. The structure of classism is what gives these modern ones these things. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Let's be honest. Even those who are wealthy, the majority of them who are wealthy, how did you really get your wealth? Was privilege not involved? Was influence not involved? Was corruption not involved? There's hardly nobody, even in Africa. If you were rich before 60s because you were one chief, your parents, your grandparents were one chiefs, just like Jaja Wapobo, they were sellouts who betrayed their own kind and were getting benefits from the West. Jaja Wapobo is remembered in history because empathy. But in truth, he was a sellout. He betrayed his own people. You see?
I am so glad you're bringing this in, and this is how I can explain it. For you to accumulate, it means you have denied another.
Yes.
For you to accumulate in a community where you have poor and people who are not eating and people who don't have shelter means you have taken from them. And this is a concept that many people are having a hard time adjusting to, that I have said to them. For us to move to a place of equity, we have to be comfortable with losing billionaires and millionaires and trillionaires. That vocabulary will not exist in a world that is equitable. It won't. And because for it to exist, we have to all be billionaires, is what we're saying. Or at least there must be at least 20%, not the 2%. The fact that it's 2% is showing exactly how dysfunctional our society is. So I agree with you on this one. And I have said, and as I commune with my fellow Kenyans as we try to figure out how Kenya is going to move forward, that no one in leadership should be a millionaire or a billionaire. If you're a millionaire or a billionaire, you're already disqualified, because that means you accumulated and took from others instead of sharing. There's no way you're getting, especially in a Kenya or any other nation today in MwanaUbuntu, Africa, there's no way you're accumulating that much wealth if you share it. No way. And sharing does not mean you deny yourself. It means that you ensure that your community is doing as well as you're doing, so that you strengthen your community. Because when you're gone, your children will be left with that community. And you best hope that you had invested good, good faith in that community, so that your children have people to care for them. But if you want to say a little more before we move to 7, you can go ahead.
It's in regards to what you just said there about the Kenya leaders. I'm sincerely hoping that, though Kenya is a Bismarckian concept, Kenya doesn't really exist. That's something that was from the Berlin Conference. Mm-hmm. But I'm hoping that community, they have a council of elders rather than a leader. So if you have a council of elders and you vet them and they come in based on wisdom rather than whatever financial value system exists, mm-hmm. then you can move forward. I'm just hoping you guys never have a leader again, but instead you have a council of elders. That's what I just wanted to add to that statement.
For the Kenyans who are listening, you've been asking me what solutions I'm bringing to the table. That is one that I agree about. Let's move away from this Western mindset of a leader and let's have a council of elders. That happened actually in our history. We did have some societies that were led by council of elders. For example, Brother Idris gave you an example of Southern Africa. Was it Namibia you gave an example of?
Yeah, it was
that area, right? Mm-hmm. Where the gentleman is approached by a white man, and he says, hold on, before I give you that answer. Goes, gathers his council of elders, and they can answer together. So I agree with you. And I really hope that, so Kenyans, this is what we need to think about. But moving beyond that, um, the seventh trait, the leader is one who is preconcerned with building only structures of status quo, self-grandeur elevation, classism, and nefariously control mechanisms, legitimized in various ways, and when need be, orchestrating diabolical, destructive, negative mechanisms of disharmony, chaos, that entangle those it leads into perpetual conditions of subjugation, loyalty, obedience, and servitude. The ethical critical thinker is one who is concerned with developing and building and testing systems for implementation and societal use with the aim of elevating those around him, her, for positive and harmonious interactions aimed at eradicating centuries of being stuck, fermenting in a set of vegetative conditions. Please say more about this one.
I think the three words nefariously control mechanisms say it all. You see, ask yourself this. All the laws that you've been subject to and all the ones you have no idea exist, did you have a say in the construct of any of these laws? These rules and regulations, did you as an individual, but yet you're part of this society, but you were never consulted. You were never even asked to vote on a law. With modern day technology where people could actually vote on a law, you can put the kiosks in all town halls and people could go there and see what and actually vote. That doesn't exist because that's how, the classism, those who are obsessed with power, control, and servitude, these are the mechanisms they use to control you. And then they'll tell you it's for your own benefit.
Mm-hmm.
How does the law that locks me up benefit me?
Mm-hmm.
Puts me in prison benefits me. And they'll say, oh, wait, this is the rule of the law, not the rule of the jungle. But the jungle has harmony and balance.
Thank
Your
you.
laws don't have harmony and balance. What they have are chains and shackles. Until when we understand, the whole system has to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's through laws. Yes, you legal people. Yes, you studied law. Look, one of the happiest things that happened to me was before, when I was an undergraduate, I applied for law, but I ended up being thrown in philosophy. I was about to change back to law, but something said no, just go through philosophy. I'm just so happy I was never a lawyer because when I see what they have to go through, and they have to be liars of the highest.
Exactly.
Deceivers, manipulators, and vicious. It creates a monster.
Yes.
Yes, you legal people, you're monsters. If anybody has encountered you in your true form, you realize, how's this person, the father that I know here, when he's there, he's a monster. How do you cross? Because they've bred you that way through the system, the education. And you've not seen it to question it, to say, let me withdraw. Their laws are one of the mechanisms. Those are why I call them nefarious, because people don't seem to understand how it's done. Until when you have a system that can create laws that the people vote on, these are not laws. And a law doesn't mean it's right or wrong either. See, it just means a group of people have just successfully manipulated and got their way.
Yeah.
The police don't represent you, but they have to be the ones to enforce all the laws that they have no clue how those laws were made. And they have no conscience.
Mm-hmm.
They don't question this law that I have to enforce. How was it made? How did it get here? Did the masses truly accept this law? No. With modern day technology, where every person, you can force every person to put a thumbprint on a passport, and you can't get them to voluntarily put a thumbprint on a vote. Yeah. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So we need to understand that most of the things, the mechanisms of control, things like law, there's so many, but it's all enshrouded in the legal system. Yes. And so that's why we need to create a new legal system. Maybe not even a legal system. I don't know. When the critical mass wakes up, they'll figure it out. But those things have to be looked at and removed from going forward, or else Africa will never develop. All you do is copycat, what your slave masters have given you, and then you'll end up with all the negatives of those systems and add them to your present conditions. Those negatives will be amplified. So they must be replaced with something more sane and more humane.
As you talk about it, the closest I can come to before we sit down all together and figure out what we're going to call this is a community agreement of protocol, of how we're going to interact with each other instead of laws, a community agreement. And as you were talking, I remember it's funny because as I read and as you were talking, I keep replaying instances in my own life that I have encountered this. As you speak of law, I asked my criminal law professor, who was practicing lawyer, how he slept, how he dealt with himself, how he looked himself in the mirror, because he kept giving us scenarios of people he had defended who were literally horrible, horrible human beings. And he said he slept better. He had no problem with sleeping because he was practicing law. Because he ensured he did what was right by the law. And just that sentence by itself should tell all of us how dysfunctional that community that is grounded by law instead of morality is. But say some more if you see you want to say something.
We need to understand something. Before the European, Africa existed. And no, Africa wasn't ruled by kings and queens. Screw that Mansa Musa story of being the richest man in the world, carrying a whole slate of gold through the jungle. That didn't make sense. Africans lived before Europeans. Nobody has gone to do the research because big pharma and big corporation will not sponsor that kind of research. How did they live in peace and harmony? Europeans could not have conquered Africa if Africa was a warfaring, barbarian, savage, primitive environment. It's because they were living in harmony. You need to go and you people who do research, who take it as a profession, you need to take some research upon yourself and not wait for corporations to come and give you something to research. Do it for the inner you, the one that knows you need to do something right before you leave this world. Put a meaning to your own life. Go and do the research. Find out, how did they live in statelessness peacefully? The state is a construct of control. But these people were living in statelessness, in peaceful. No, statelessness is not anarchy. It's not what these lunatics who are trying to say statelessness is. That's not it. People lived in structured statelessness where there was no anarchy. They didn't go and rob each other. They didn't kill each other like the lunatic George Bush was saying the law of the jungle. None of that happened. They were living. They were existing. How did they do it is the question that we need to go and research. How? We can learn a lot from past African history, pre-European. But because nobody's taken it upon, a researcher at the university is so proud. He's like, I'll research how to kill babies or drop nuclear bombs on people because I can win a Nobel Peace Prize or some stupid lunatic award. But he won't go out and say, let me go and find out how they survived prior to Europeans. How come we didn't have all these conflicts? How come we were not versatile in confrontation and violence? Because if we were, none of them could have come into Africa because they didn't have nuclear weapons and they didn't even have cars or guns. They only had rickety, what they call it, not even Kalashnikovs, stupid guns that they had to repel. It was only later that the machine gun came in. So they didn't even have those sort of weapons. So how did we live peacefully? And they could come with those dilapidated weapons and colonize us. How is that possible? There's a lesson to be learned from Africa, not just because it's the cradle of civilization, but because it's got a lot of historical lessons. You need to even ask yourself, which researcher, we all know that the Sphinx, it wasn't erosion that took the nose and the lips off. It was the order of the ruling class at the time that paid archaeologists and all kinds of things to go and chip off areas that could depict anything that was non-white or European, because they're not really white. Like a piece of paper next to them, they're not white. So let's call them everybody what we are. We're not black, they're not white. But it was the ruling class of the time that orchestrated that event. So wait a minute, why don't we research to find out what really was it like in ancient times? before Europeans and all this neutralization of societies, religions, and all kinds of things. Remove the cloak of the embedded bias of everything African is negative and approach it with a neutral mindset. You'll find out you learn a lot, an extreme lot from our past history. It's just that we're still waiting for people to do the research. Unfortunately, if we have people who have resources, kindly pour your resources into gathering teams of researchers. We do have skilled researchers. They're out there, people in Brazil, Colombia, all over the diaspora, as well as in the mainland Africa. They can come together and research properly, not use Western European criteria to write your research. Do it genuinely, objectively. Don't lie. Don't manipulate. Just do it genuinely and go and truly discover things. Sorry, we went over this part a bit too long.
No, I am glad you know. Everything we do is important, and we are going to go beyond the hour. We'll put out the recording. StreamYard has a requirement; it has to be an hour. We'll put that out, but we will talk until we exhaust all the 20 traits. But as you were talking about anarchy, I recently encountered, because the Kenyan government and so-called leaders in Kenyan governance have been throwing this, we don't want Kenya to be in a state of anarchy, while Kenya is actually in a state of anarchy, which is why the people are rising. But as I was looking up the word, and this is the importance of using our own languages instead of these European borrowed words that we don't even understand what they mean. Anarchy is contradictory. The two meanings of anarchy are contradictory, because the one you described is a structure that does not follow any laws. There's a better way of explaining it. I'm not explaining it, but it's not limited to a rigid system. It is based on function. How do we function best? And then anarchy, that also means a state like the negative side of anarchy, where there's chaos. Those two are descriptions of anarchy, yet they are contradictory to each other. One is positive and one is negative. So again, the importance of using our own languages to describe what we're doing and to describe how we see community and how we want to see community. Number 8, you say the leader is one who publicly talks electrifyingly about the notion of competition as the bedrock of a specified promoted system, but secretly harbors it as a threat vector. This one, listen, as I was reading all the traits, sometimes I got moments of humor and was just laughing, because when it's so ridiculous, sometimes you just have to laugh to stop from crying. So the leader is one who publicly talks electrifyingly about the notion of competition as the bedrock of a specific promoted system, but secretly harbors it as a threat vector that needs to be vigilantly monitored, controlled, and neutralized in order to ensure the continued existence of the control panel, as well as the very system in which the concept of leadership co-opts and thrives within. The ethical critical thinker is one who cares not for competition, nor the system at play, because in the mind of the ethical critical thinker, there is no game being played, as being realistic is more important. Hence, he or she is preoccupied with genuinely lifting up the collective from the mud of Eurocentric civilization. And he or she does so by simply being themselves, applying the 5 WH, I'll let you speak to that, the who's, the what's, and all that, thinking framework consistently at all times, while constantly thinking outside the box, while still maintaining a vigil on the box at all times. Say some more about the 8th trait, please.
The 5 WH is basically what, where, when, whom, where, and how. You need that framework to think. It should be
the foundations of critical thinking.
Everything you do every day, even when you're going to the toilet, you need to be saying, okay, what am I going to do in the toilet? Where do I go from after the toilet? It always has to be part of you. But coming back to the threat vectors, you need to understand why they play games. Majority of them own corporations and they have shares in all kinds of organizations. They'll tell you, oh, we're open to competition, but they're the same ones who are going to neutralize you. You see, behind the scenes, they collaborate and pay people to neutralize you because they're not open to competition. If really they wanted to be this capitalist, idyllic structure that they put up, it will be to their detriment, because playing fair means they will lose out too. So it's just lip service to capitalism. I mean, many people don't seem to understand this. For instance, the person, your president in your country, how many corporations and how many shares has he not got in all kinds of organizations? Do you really think he wants you to rise from the dust and then your company overtakes the company that he makes his money from? He's not. Come on, stop deluding yourself. So everything they say, everything that those mushy words that come out of their mouth, if I was you, I'll take them and I'll put them in the bin. That's all I can say. If you're not astute enough to understand this gameplay, then you need to be questioning yourself in the mirror. You need to go to the mirror and look in the mirror and ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Am I suffering from some mental or emotional inadequate state of being? Or what? That's all I can say on that. I mean, there's not more to say.
Whew. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are helping us move beyond being zombies. This whole time, what you've been telling us is we've been zombies, as Fela calls it, for too long. Just, you tell them to jump, they jump. You tell them to sing, they sing. Zombies, as Fela described them. You tell them to shoot, they shoot. They don't stop and think, why am I shooting? Who am I shooting? Why should I shoot that person? What is going to happen once we shoot them? When are we shooting them, right? The 5 WH thinking framework. Number 9, you say the leader is one who is easily compromisable because his or her leadership is based on varying factors, ranging from influence, popularity, likes, dislikes, adoration. Oh my goodness. I don't mean to derail. I'm actually within the trait. This is actually currently happening in Kenya with the different people who've stepped up to say, I will be the leader. This is literally what is happening. I will start over. The leader is one who is easily compromisable because his or her leadership is based on varying factors ranging from influence, popularity, likes, dislikes, adoration, accolades, continued loyalties of others, subordination, hierarchies of classism, etc. All virtues that deeply require servitude to strongly exist and prevail. The ethical critical thinker is one who has no need for virtues such as popularity, likes, subordination, influence, etc. As what he or she does, they do because it is part of their nature to do. And I'll add to that, and you can I guess give your thoughts on it. I'll add to that because what they do is based on the well-being of the collective. But go ahead, Brother Idris.
Think about it. I mean, if you're somebody who needs influence, somebody can easily come up and say, okay, I want your vote. I pay you. You've got the people. The same thing, if you need, I need to be, let's say, a baron, a lord, and you're a peasant. It's easy. Somebody else can come and meet you and say, hey, look, you don't even like the peasants. Why don't we do this to the peasants?
Mm-hmm.
And you go with it. If you desperately need to be liked, how many times have women not come up and said, oh, because of they needed to be liked, and that's why they ended up being raped, because they pushed themselves in front of men and whatever. So many times, because you were yearning for love. You were yearning for something. Once you have all those issues, you're vulnerable. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that ethical critical thinker is a stone cold person. No. They love, they like, but they use reason. Even when I'm going to like you or love you, I have to put myself and say, did I entice you in any way? Are you liking me because I've got money? Are you liking me because I dress like this? These were all the questions. Look, during my younger days, I couldn't go to a nightclub without women jumping on me. Mm-hmm. But each time I asked myself, why me and not the other guys? Mm-hmm. What did I do to attract this? You with me? I contributed to this. I can't lie to myself. I shouldn't be feeling good about myself. I must have done something. And yes, I did. I dressed in a manner that was appealing. I had a body structure that was appealing. I danced. I learned to dance. I put in all these effort to do these things. So in a way, I solicited. It wasn't natural. So really, what that turned out, and unfortunately, it influenced many of my decisions and my things I did. Was like, no, I'm not going to do this with this girl because I co-opted this situation. It's like I was steering you in a way, and then my conscience would prick me. That's the difference. If it was somebody else that said, hey, like I had a friend, he said, this is my only opportunity. I may never get this opportunity again. I'll take advantage of it. Those were the differences. And I'm like, wait a minute, love. You don't need to always take advantage of everything. Admit to yourself, you set the stage. You set the scene for this to happen. So don't feel good about yourself. In fact, feel guilty about yourself. See, because you set the stage. Look, Casey and Jojo of the group said it best. We had problems with getting girls. So we said to ourselves, let's go do something and sing and go get the girls.
And they did.
And they did.
They did.
So you need to see, that's the difference between the ethical critical thinker. He puts himself or herself in front of the mirror and admits in his and her quiet times what they are contributing to this situation. The leader has no qualms. It's an opportunity. It's a window of opportunity to exploit, because exploitation is part of the leader's ethics and the whole makeup. I hope that clears that point.
You have no idea. You are inspiring a different way of thinking that I believe, honestly, for those who actually sit and listen to this with genuine intention of fixing the problems we have, it will make it easier for you to transition from this destructive system that we are currently immersed in to this new way of thinking, despite how uncomfortable it's going to be. Because it will be uncomfortable. We will have to give up so much that we've been comfortable having in order to create a place of well-being for all of us. So I appreciate you for doing that. And I appreciate all who inspired you, because we know that knowledge does not belong to one person. All the influences in your life, all the environments that inspired you to put this together and help us think in this way. I'm having a hard time getting this in one bite, but I guess I'll start reading the top and then we can go down. Number 10. The leader is one who presumes their own identity. And let me just highlight so that you know where we are. But Brother Idris has done a good job of highlighting. So there we are, because we don't want that little box to come up since it's a PDF. The leader is one who presumes their own identity as distinct from others and the natural world around them. In many cases, it becomes mind-boggling dictatorial, as in the cases of the likes of creatures like Bokassa, Mobutu, and Hitler, etc. Failing to recognize the interconnectedness that exists amongst all living things. Oftentimes, their very self-worth, I, is tied to their status symbol, material goods, authority acquired, power obtained, and resources at their disposal, so badly so that it constitutes their very well-being and state of perceived happiness. The ethical critical thinker, on the other hand, is one who places him or herself firmly in that interconnectedness we of humanity and genuinely strives to maintain balance and harmony within that interconnectedness of self and other. Seen or unseen, heard or unheard, he or she remains the very being, what, when, where, why, whom, how, that she is a human being abstaining from the irrelevances of human constructs as much as possible. Say some more, please.
On average, if not all leaders, they submerge themselves into a physical world that has a number of constructs and a number of presuppositions. And and what that does is it detaches them from seeing the interconnectedness between everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. Many of us have had to live a part of the system. But that doesn't take away the fact that, look, before the system existed nature, existed the world. If you look at the relatedness. For instance, there was this, I think, say about the 60s or so, there was this rationale that said, oh, we need to get rid of the pest. They classified everything as a pest. But there was an ecosystem in place, and they destroyed them. And they didn't even have the courage to admit what they were doing, that they were destroying the ecosystem. Instead, they said, add more evil upon evil. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm so glad you're talking about this, because I've been trying to explain to some friends that the mosquito, as painful as it is to us, plays a role in our society. And if we get rid of the mosquito, there will be imbalance. That the cockroach, as uncomfortable as it is, but it's also manufactured discomfort, plays a role in society. And if we get rid of the cockroach, we will pay a price. But go on and talk about this. I mean, the bed bug, we have to discuss about the bed bug, but go ahead.
Because you've raised a very good point here. Let me go back to the mosquito. You see, unfortunately, the mosquito you have today is not the mosquito. This is a weaponized mosquito. Thank you, Mr. Bill Gates. This is a weaponized mosquito. We need to understand that. And it's not Bill Gates that's really the problem. It's the scientists behind the scenes that are the real problem. And those are the ones that, if you're looking to solve problems, don't look at the man in the front. Forget the hitman Bill Gates. Forget him. Look what's behind him. Because Bill Gates is just amplifying something that was put in a place for him. Those people, what makes you a scientist? I mean, I'm not sure I dealt with it here, but in another paper, I point out we do need scientists, but not these sort of scientists. We need ethical scientists, ethical critical scientists, not these sort of scientists that prevail today. These ones are Nobel Prize Award hustlers. We don't want hustler scientists. We need real scientists. And it's they who have created this problem, that we've been devoid of nature. Until we can understand, we need to preserve what is still left. And we can only do it by understanding the damage we've done to date. Many of us are reading the textbooks that Bill Gates and his cronies have sponsored people to write and produce and spoon feed you. You need to do away with all of that rubbish and learn how to do research yourself. Learn how to read objectively as best as possible. Obviously, nobody's objective 100%, but you can be 90%, 99% objective. That's enough. Be good at being objective in your analysis of things. We need to start realizing, luckily for us, Africa is not a village. It's a huge continent. And there's still a lot of green available. I mean, I fly over Africa and I'm looking for humans. The humans are in the condensed cities. And I'm like, when I was a kid, they were telling me Africa was overpopulated. First, initially, the story was it was only wild animals and a few bunch of savages who live in trees. And then the story changed in the 60s and 70s to it was overpopulated. But I'm flying over and I'm looking down and I see land, forest, land, forest. The people, where are they? Where's this overpopulation? You take the population of Africa, you can put it in a country like Holland. But Africa is 50 or 100 more times bigger than Holland can ever dream of being. Where is Africa doesn't have an overpopulation problem. In fact, it has an underpopulation problem. It's just that they're concentrated. Many of them think the cities is where they find life, and they end up finding hell there. We have all that green. What I'm trying to say is that green needs to be accounted for by us, not them. Their scientists are going to come here and they're going to manipulate and they're going to fall for the economics of things. And they're going to play hand in hand with the statisticians, the politicians, and all they'll do is this stupid game they play of deceit, manipulation, lies upon lies. They add a lie on top of another lie to cover one lie. We don't want that. We need our people to realize, go back to the grassroots, go to the kids, develop curriculums that will help make them think positively and productively to change this balance. Because we need scientists more than we need stupid guns and stupid drones. 100%. They're selling you secondhand dilapidated equipment. You can't use them against them. Your encryption codes are limited. They have decryptions that can decrypt all those things. So you need scientists. But we don't need the modern day scientists. We need a new breed of scientific thinkers. That's it. People who understand methodology. We need a new breed, and we've got to be the ones to create that new breed.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do it, but we've got to figure this out somehow.
We will do it. We will do it. We will do it. So and as you say that, I want to add, and given the room, right? If we were to operate in a harmonious way with nature, Mother Nature is very good about fixing herself. We just need to get out of the way and let her do so.
Yes. Very true.
Yes. So number 11, and if nothing else, the 2 months of being in isolate, what's it called? What's the word, during COVID?
Lockdown.
Lockdown. If that was not proof enough that Mother Nature can heal herself, I don't know what is. For those of you who were observing or need to go back and observe, what happened then when we were forced to step out of the way? Number 11, the leader is one who needs to make promises. And we're going through the different traits that show comparison between a leader and an ethical, critical thinker. For us to move towards a mindset, a society where ethical, critical thinking is the norm and leadership is a thing of the past that we look at with warning and reminding ourselves that it is a place we never need to return to. So the 11th trait, the leader is one who needs to make promises in order to ensure he or she sustains their positioning, and as such can feel good about themselves as they need to be liked. This explains the dictators and the Museveni continuing his leadership time. Desired, adorned, heralded, and as such they feed off attention in order to feel good and idolized. The ethical critical thinker is one who recognizes that there is no magic to be performed, nor are there any silver lining or anything. Rather, things are subject to conditions, complexity, trial, error, change, and influence. So the art of promises are not a part of his or her toolkit, but rather understanding, then critically analyzing and testing, then doing. Documenting, followed by maintaining, is what the focus is on in order to understand and figure out the how-tos of most things. And as we talk about this before you get into it, I will say, you and I, as we were talking, this goes to an ethical thinker is someone who's always thinking of inspiring others to take the strengths that he or she has and sharing them with others to strengthen the community, not keeping them to themselves only. They understand that the power and the well-being of the community lies in sharing these skills with more people, nurturing and mentoring others to step in that position as well, instead of keeping leadership for themselves. So go ahead and speak more about this.
Well, just to add what you said, and further down you'll see it. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So the ethical critical thinker knows she has to bring that weak link to the same level as he or she is at. So they'll always inspire, motivate, and nudge you forward, because nudging you is nudging themselves. Okay, on this one, how many times have you not heard people make promises, people in positions of power, resources, and influence? They make promises, and you sit down thinking, you're not going to be able to keep this promise.
Mm-hmm.
It's not feasible, because first and foremost, you're even talking about a projection in time with various variables. Any change in any variable could just nullify everything you're talking about. So why are you making promises? I mean, when do you ever see a politicians, for example, come up and say, I'll build a bridge, but please remember this. I may not be able to build this bridge. It all depends on something. They will never say that. They'll just say, I'll build this bridge. I'll bring electricity to your environment. I'll do this. And it never happens. I'll aim for reparations. It never happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't calculate all the variables, because they were not interested in all the variables in the first place. So if you're not interested in something that is complicated and you don't understand all the variables, why are you making promises to it? People meet me and ask me, oh, can you do this so things? I'll always tell them, I'll need to look at it. It depends. I have to weigh things up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I have to try it to see if it will even work. But the politician would just say something at random.
Mm-hmm.
Because he has no intention. That's not what he perceives himself there. He's not really there for change. He's there because he's thinking of the I, not the we. In order to think for the we, you need to look at all these variables that I mentioned there. You know, so if you're not thinking of that, you should not be making a promise. And unfortunately, they don't have it within their remit.
No.
Otherwise, unfortunately.
But the thing, even beyond what you're saying, the thing that we deny ourselves in having a society of leaders who give promises and not just give the whole scenario, right? What could be, what risks are in the way, what barriers are in the way, this might be a challenge, this is the situation, is they deny themselves the advantage of having another critical thinker step in to help take away a barrier, right? If we end up being ethical critical thinkers in our positions, in our roles to help society function, let's call it that, right? And we present things, okay, this is our goal. We want to build a highway. These are the challenges. These are the positives. This is what we need to get. Then we open ourselves to and we're presenting it to our community. We open ourselves to the advantage of having the community step out and say, hey, we can help you take away that barrier. Hey, have you thought of going about it this way or that way or that or this other way? So again, beyond even it being I won't call it a fault, a lack, what would I call it? A disadvantage as far as how we are thinking today and as far as how we operate in order to make contribute towards the well-being of all of us. It is denying us the opportunity of being our best as human beings. Yes.
They act as a stifling, stumbling block.
Exactly.
And just one point on that before you go, because you raised something that's just triggered in my mind. I think it's best we understand this.
Okay.
If a leader was really interested in developing their country, for instance, he says, we're going to bring roads to this place. But listen carefully what he says. He says, we're going to bring foreign companies to come here and play this. A true person concerned about that scenario, that situation will say, we're going to put together a team of people who are going to figure out how to convert the existing raw materials that are readily available into finished products that we can be used to make tools that can make roads and can have an end result of a tarred or whatever kind of road. It doesn't have to be tarred, but whatever. But they're not interested in that. It's a quick fix. You know, it's a cosmetic wash over. That's all they're interested in. Because first, they don't have it within their capabilities to think outside the box. They don't have it within their capabilities to even analyze, let alone be critical, let alone observe all the variables involved. They don't have it. Unfortunately, I'm not being rude, but you don't have it.
No, I don't think you're being rude. You're being realistic, and we need to start saying things as they are. This sugarcoating, this politically correct is not helping anyone. The best way for someone to love you and allow you to grow to be your best self is to tell you the truth about how things are, not to sugarcoat it. Moving on to the 12th trait. The leader is one who lives and is engrossed in the I, as everything he or she does is done with I first, and as such, collaboration is all that he or she can do, because within collaboration, the I is what governs and also what produces the collaboration in the first place, as all parties in such collaborations come into it with the I in mind, and thus the individual benefit is the motivating factor, as everything is self-motivated. The ethical critical thinker is one who, being concerned with the we, has no time for destructive vices of arguments and debates, but rather aims for the positive of discussion and brainstorming in a teaming and teamwork manner in order to be realistic about the challenges that exist. And I'm going to say this quickly. This was one of the biggest one that hit me because I am so much someone who touts collaboration. And I had to step back and look at myself and see how I'm contributing to the dysfunction. But before I even go ahead and let you share, Brother Idris, we're not saying that Brother Idris has found the Bible, the be and what is it? The how do you say that? And be all. No, the end or be all of humanity and how we should associate with each other. No, we're saying that Brother Idris sat, critically analyzed with an ethical grounding, critically analyzed the way things are, and came up with some observations that he believes might help us move to a better place. That's what we're saying. And then together we can join him, which is what I'm doing here and which is what we're all going to do, and say, we agree. Can we change this? And as you've seen, we've been adding some things. I've been adding my own words to it, right? So, Brother Idris, say more about what I just said.
Okay. This one is, like you said, it's complicated and big. First and foremost, the word collaboration. We need to dissect that, but we'll do that after I've talked about one little small thing. You see, I was growing up, there were school debates and people were, yes, I was growing. People were so proud of themselves saying we're in debate clubs. We're in, and I'm thinking, but wait a minute, there are three things here: a debate, an argument, and a discussion. The two former ones are destructive. They're not positive, they're negative. It's only the discussion that's productive. When you're in an argument, you're in conflict. You're not finding a result. You're not looking for results. You're all trying to make a point and try to impose your point upon the other. You're almost like Bible bashing. When you're in a debate, you've already taken a point. You've said, that's my enemy. I'm the good guy, and we're going at it. It's only a discussion that people sit together and they discuss. And that's why you need a council of elders. You see, because that's what council of elders do. They discuss. You see, the rest, the leaders are out. You've seen it in political campaigns. The blue party is the most superior. The red party is the better. We're this, we're that. They're arguing and debating. They even publicly do it. They have podiums. They set up fancy events, and all these IT gurus are there hooking up cables and and fancy equipment to set the stage for it.
Yeah.
And nobody even stops to think it's a negative. It's a destructive thing.
Yeah.
It's not a positive. The one thing they need to do is to discuss. But because their minds are contorted, they've amputated their own brains into believing into the very nonsense of the system they've created. So they can't see outside of the system. They're in that box. They're compartmentalized. Even though they use compartmentalization as a strategy for control, they themselves are in compartmentalization. So now let's get back to the word collaboration. It's erroneously used to think it means teaming, but it's not. It's teaming. You see, I can collaborate with you, but I'm coming in there with my eye, my benefit. What we're really looking for when we come together is not for us to start holding hands and singing Kumbaya. That's not what we're doing. We're coming, I may have a skill set. You have a different skill set. We're finding ways of how we can put each individual's skill set to a collective benefit, for the benefit of the weak. You see, teamwork is we all share a similarity in our understanding. Like, for instance, project managers, all project managers come together. We're teaming. But when a doctor, a lawyer, a philosopher, a scientist all come together, you're teaming. You're not doing teamwork. You're coming with your separate skills for a collective objective to produce something. For instance, if we said we needed to find a system of defending Africa, a continent, we know we can't go buy dilapidated weapons. That's not going to work. But we could come up with an idea of creating some kind of force field around the whole damn continent. So if they do try and nuke us, we can say return to sender. We figure a way of how we can scientifically get those metal objects, because all those components that they use to make them, they came from the ground. If we research and study the ground thoroughly, we can understand how we can maybe return that nuke to the sender. And say,
agree.
Have a taste of your own medicine. You see it. So, but you need a whole bunch of people with varying skills to achieve that objective. You don't need military generals. They have no freaking clue of all the variables involved to create such a thing. You need people with different skill sets. And that's the difference between teaming and teamwork. And I hope, if anything, the audience takes away that from this, if not anything else.
So teaming versus collaboration. Teaming to bring your skills, your strengths to come together and work together for a common purpose, for the well-being of the collective. of all of you, not just centering your eye in the collaboration. And I was getting a little emotional as you were speaking about that, because as you described that defense, I honestly think that is the way forward for us as far as defense. It's the counter defense is where we need to focus. And we will be doing that. We know the challenges, we'll be discussing the challenges, but we will be doing that. And thank you for that. Number 13, the leader intentionally lacks an understanding of a weak link in a chain and is not primed for propping weak links, as she needs those weak links to exist in order to sustain their leadership positioning, as they need the breaks and the chaos in the chain in order to sustain their very positioning. Thus, when they target and cut off the head of any organization that organization dies a woeful death, like the apartheid regime of South Africa, often publicly gloated about as a strategy back in the days. The ethical critical thinker is one who recognizes the need for all links in the chain to be strong and propped up, because the chain has a symbiotic relationship, as the strongest link is only as good as the weakest link. So such a link is prime for strengthening. Thus, crucial to any ethical critical thinker and high on his or her list is ensuring the chain is fortified and strong. Thus, because the ethical critical thinker is not a leader, but rather just another replicable you, there is no head to cut off or target, because ethical critical thinkers are you and are everywhere in space and time. Brother Idris, before you break this one down, my brothers and sisters, MwanaUbuntu everywhere, listen to this. Rather than just another replicable you, there is no head to cut off or target. Rather than just another replicable you, there is no head to cut off or target. Think about our history, our ancestors who've been taken out because they threatened the system, and think about it as far as this goes, and what power lies in understanding this. Brother Idris.
Okay. Think like what you rightly said, Malcolm X, Walter Rodney, Samori Toure, just name all of them. They're all taken out. There's a reason why they were taken out, because they contributed to the problem. They should have spent more time replicating themselves. And this call goes out to the likes of Julius Malema and Umar Johnson and all these other people making a lot of noise. If you're not replicating yourself, you're not helping the situation, you're aiding the problem. You need to be training people that can replace you like yesterday. You need to be grooming a lot of other Julius Malemas, another Umar Johnson. You need to get people, train them, train them. Invest most of your time training people that can be you, so that if they did take you out, they didn't take you out. Malcolm, when he left a vacuum. Look, this isn't about selling t-shirts with "I love Malcolm" on it, about wearing hats, like Sister Soldier pointed out to you folks. This is not about that. We need everybody to be a Malcolm X, everybody to be a Julius Malema, everybody to be a Umar Johnson, everybody to be a Samori Toure, especially a Samori Toure, to be a Dusant, to be a Marcus Garvey. We need everybody. You must possess the same capabilities. I have to be your minimum standard, so to speak. I should be your minimum standard. You shouldn't stop at me. You should be better than me. But there's a minimum. So you need to train the people. If you're not doing that, ask yourself in the mirror, what happens if they do take you out? What happens? All your work wasted. It's the same thing as what happened to African Stream. All the effort wasted because you didn't prepare for a rainy day. You need to prepare while you're still in your prime. Learn from the mistakes of your people before you. You must create duplicates of yourself and make sure that everybody, even the kid in the village, is a you. That kid in the village must be you. So people like Julius Malema and Umar Johnson, Screw Wall Street. Don't create our people for Wall Street. Create our people who can create a Wall Street. Train them to be able to create a Wall Street and to replace you when you go. So hopefully, I mean, this point comes across to everybody clearly that until we're doing that, we haven't started the struggle. Because it's not about I, it's about the we. And if you really want to last long, you need to duplicate yourself in the first place. You know? And then it makes it even harder for them to even neutralize you, because the South African apartheid regime was always cocky and saying, cut off the head of the snake. But wait a minute, what if that snake has got multiple heads? You know? There you go. I mean, I can't say anything more. It speaks for itself, really.
I'm glad you talked about African Stream, right? And there's a sense of leadership in that they see themselves as leaders as far as opening up to us telling our narratives ourselves and breaking out of the Western media system. And I reached out to African Stream and I said, let us help you. Like the best way African Stream, this is directly to African Stream right now, the best way you can fight the system, the best way you can fight what is coming to you is by teaming with Kumbukeni, with Kibunge. I forget what Chakra's channel is on YouTube, with the other
African. You mean Chakra Bass?
Yes. Yeah. What's his channel called?
I don't know, but I know who you're talking about.
Yes, Kimbunge or something like that. But the best way for you to fight is to teaming with us so that we can fight collectively. And I have reached out to you, and you need we need to all connect instead of wanting to be the Afrika, right? The wanting to stand out individually. We need to team. The power is in all of us teaming and said, to hell with you, Blinken. We really do not give a foot behind what you think. And to hell with you, YouTube and Facebook, thinking that you can operate in this way and be in our countries. Get out if you're not going to let us stream and tell our story as it should be. There's only one condition you can operate in our countries by, and it is by letting us be. So that's the only way we're going to win. That is the only way we're going to fight them. You can be in court, get all the money you want to fight them in court. You will not win.
The judge is them.
Thank you.
The judge is them. Who's
the judge is them.
It's one of them. Even forget the United Nations, because this isn't the time of the 60s when they were forming. They've already got a plan in place to control the world. Look at the IP address 4 scheme cock-up. There was a handful of organizations that were supposed to rule the world via the United Nations.
Yes.
They're just using Google and Facebook and co right now. Yeah, for that purpose. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
But if you honestly, if you want to know more, what's the organization in the UK that usually vets African leaders before they become leaders? There's a word for it. But when you see the members, you have people like Bill Gates as members in a national organization that vets national leaders. Like it is these individuals, these elites that we need to start looking at. And we need to understand that the judges in their system are part of that system. And therefore, it always pisses me off. And it always makes me very frustrated when I hear people, let's go to the ICC, let's go to this. I'm like, what the hell? How are you going to your oppressor to ask them to see your humanity? Honestly. And I say to my brothers and sisters, we need to create a different system that fights theirs. And they tell me I'm a criminal. Yes, I am a criminal in their eyes because I am going against their laws. Intentionally.
But wait, how can you, like you rightly pointed out, how can you meet somebody who's hitting you on the head with a baton and then you say, please don't, what are you asking? Please don't hit me too hard. But he's hitting you anyway.
Don't you see I look like you? Did they not see that before they started hitting you?
No, I don't know. It's beyond me. The reasoning of those people. I don't know what I would ideally love to go in their brain so I can try and figure out how their brain TikToks.
And my brother Idris, maybe we will invent the technology that does it. Let us keep the hope. Moving on to the 14th trait. The leader is one who requires servitude to prevail, because without it, his or her leadership positioning would not exist. And then We have about, let me see, we have about 15 minutes to go through the remaining traits. So let's keep that in mind so that we can get all this in.
Okay.
So the leader is one who requires servitude to prevail, because without it, his or her leadership positioning would not exist, and as such, the leader, by virtue of their positioning, is always susceptible to compromise and maintaining status quo and concepts such as classism. On the other hand, the ethical thinker is one who has very little desire for limelight attention, and by employing the 5WH thinking framework, takes it upon him or herself to understand the origins, the root of most things, and thus is able to see through the mental and emotional states of inadequacies of being that often dominates the individual engrossed in and needing or seeking attention and elevated status.
Just let's just pose a question and leave this to the public, and then we move on. Read this over and over again, and then ask yourself, what do your leaders do? What do they require from you? If it's not servitude, then I can't say anything more. So let's move on, because we're short of time.
Thank you. And you are right, because currently, if you do not offer servitude in Kenya, you're being abducted, you're being killed, you're being disappeared. Number 15, the leader is one who thinks inside the box, with a compartmentalized stoic view within the box that leans heavily on classism, hierarchy for maintaining the box. The ethical critical thinker is one who thinks outside the box while keeping a vigil on the box, even though it shares no need for the box, looking to methodology as a tool for understanding the natural world. Quickly, I'm going to say here, the place where I was working before this, a place that was very hard to still be in because it's a place that has betrayed our community. They kept telling me, this is not how we do it here. This is not how we do it here. And many other places say that. I don't give a shit, excuse my language, what you do here. I'm trying to tell you we need to do different because what you do here is not working. Go on, Brother Idris.
That's exactly that. I mean, if you're going to do things without injecting an appropriate mindset of your environment and everything around you, and using a structured method, like methodology, to approach whatever you do, it's a waste of time. It's just a complete waste of time. Your brain is compartmentalized because you're robotic. But anyway, that's
and such a leader is, and again, when you step into the critical, ethical, critical thinking mindset, it just, which is why you and I are sitting here saying, I don't understand how, because we've already transitioned to starting to embracing this ethical, critical thinking, and we sit and ask ourselves, why would you, when you have a natural world that we do that will throw things at you that you didn't see coming, why would you be in a box? You need to open up to an opportunity that you didn't see coming so that you're best equipped to handle it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, some of these are self-explanatory. Number 16, the leader is one who presumes societies and human constructs as a given, with little to no deep understanding of the how societies and the systems that govern play within them evolved. In fact, he or she has no understanding of the confluence of the origins of queendom, its solidification through the human construct of the concept of divine right, and the centralization of feudal power to present constitutional monarchies now merged with classism and belief systems in modern times that left the broader public subjugated and servile. Because he or she presumes everything, they are highly compromisable and prepped, ready to be loyal to the control plane. The ethical, critical thinker is one who has a deeper understanding of the world, its evolution, and its current state of being, because while the leader spends much of its time indulging and rolling in attention and frolic, the ethical thinker, critical thinker, focuses on understanding as deep and wide as possible the existence of being, nuances, and interaction, having utilized from a tender age every hour deep in thought and in the pursuit of greater understanding, even when asleep, as he or she lives and breathes the 5WH thinking framework in order to better grasp the very concept of being. This one is that last sentence, even when asleep, you wake up to a dream and you're like, why? Even in your dream, you're asking why. But go ahead, Brother Idris.
But that's the way it is. For these leaders, they've never asked why. They've never asked, how did this system come about? They have no understanding of the relationship of the monarchy, the state, the religion. They have no understanding of any of this. How the merging, how over time, the passage of time, all of this came about. The classes and structures, the hierarchies that have evolved, they have no understanding. Until when they do research beyond their stupid textbooks that they were given at university. And because much just like AI that feeds you only content that it's pre-programmed with. The same thing with their education. They were fed pre-programmed content in their education. And so it's very hard for them to see through this. So some will call it cognitive dissonance or bias, but to me, it's just stupidity. You're a fool because you're not capable of thinking for yourself and taking the action necessary to propel yourself to think for yourself.
And you're right.
Let's move on, because that we could spend a long time on that if we had to, but let's move on for the sake of time.
Cognitive dissonance is the big word. Stupidity is the simple, digestible word for everyone. Literally, cognitive dissonance is stupidity. But number 17, the leader is one who, in all honesty, often suffers from a mental and emotional inadequate states of being, and thus needs to be exalted as, adored as, idolized as, and perceived as a leader. And he or she does its best to fit into the status quo, and sometimes even demigod like so, in order to appease their emotional and mental inadequate states of being. Strip the leader of his or her power, authority, adoration, idolization, resources, and privileges, and you will see he or she crumbles down to the floor. The ethical critical thinker is one who has no need for leadership, nor inadequate states of being, as he or she is always true to themselves, constantly preoccupied with analyzing and detailing change and events within his or her scope of mental view, while striving to constantly keep learning and understanding the complexities and intricacies of the world around him or her, all the way to his or her last breath.
Okay, this one quickly. If you doubt me, all I need to say is this. Bring that leader. Let me strip him of the resources, the power, and everything that he has. And I'll take him to the favela, for instance, or to some slum, or even in prison. And let's see what he's like. You see him pissing in his pants, or she pissing in their pants. Look, I was once detained in Namibia on false charges. There's something that I observed. If I was the head of the police station in Namibia, and I would walk without bodyguards, without police officers with me into the cells, and I'll go and talk to the people. But the head of that police station, even when he had police soldiers around, when the mob was, he was shitting and pissing in himself. And I thought, wait a minute, you command all the power, you came down here into the cell, and you couldn't even walk here. You were pissing, and you still got all these people protecting you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, when the inmates were, it wasn't a cell, it was just a police detention center. And so strip them of all these things. You find out they're cowards. Mm-hmm. They're cowards. They're worse than Hitler. They're just cowards. That's the truth. They need the resources and the power and the influence to be who they are. That's it. Let's end that there.
Yes. All right. 19. The leader cannot. Oh, sorry. Let me just pull it up. The leader cannot exist. Oh, wait. Did we do it 18?
No, but it's okay. We're short in time.
No, let me quickly look at it. We do have a few minutes. Let me quickly look at it, and you can just run through it. The leader is one who needs the system in place and does all he or she can to help preserve the system, because it is from that very system he or she derives their legitimacy, authority, privileges, power, and resources, the elements that aid and abet their ability to superficially overcome their own mental and emotional inadequate states of being. The ethical critical thinker is one who has no need for any existing societal system, as he/she sees through them all. More so, he/she knows a better, more humane, structured, stateless societal system that offers balance, truth, harmony, reciprocity, unity, tranquility, genuine freedom, and peaceful coexistence can be constructed and should be constructed. This explains the gatekeeper concept. But go on quickly. We have 5 minutes, so we do have time to go through the three.
Basically, we're talking about structured statelessness, creating a system based upon the past, understanding the past. So let's quickly go to 19, because we'll need to address that another time. Well, yeah.
The leader cannot exist without the system, status quo, and the state. They are fully aware that the mass acquisition of skills could change the dynamics of power and authority, so they often do their very best to dumb down diabolically the need for skills acquisition, encouraging low-level development, as that way they limit the threat to the status quo. This explains why they are not focusing on education, better education. The acquisition of knowledge, although still worrisome to those in leadership, is not so much attacked through diabolical strategies, because oftentimes those who acquire knowledge slither their ways into the status quo club, but a mass program of non-proprietary technical and non-technical skills. That there, through the level of genuine freedom and independence it provisions, poses a genuine threat to leadership and the status quo. The ethical critical thinker is one who spends his time understanding the system and fully understands the concept of the state and the hallmarks of the intentionally neutralized, stigmatized state of statelessness. The ethical critical thinker understands that it is the people who need to own the control and control their societies, and not a subset of self-elevated individuals that are a part of a topology human construct maintaining systems constructed on classism hierarchy to ensure a control plane exists. The ECT ethical critical thinker recognizes the development potential of having the overwhelming majority skilled to the point of being able to fend for themselves in harmony, rather than being bonded and subjugated into conditions that compel them to become handout dependencies of an elitist construct and system. Brother Idris.
Basically, think of this. If there was a war today and they bomb this city where you're at, it's skills that's going to replace the city and reconstruct it. If everybody is, well, if not everybody, but the majority of people are skilled, they can fend for themselves. They don't need servitude and subjugation. They can take care of themselves. They can farm and feed and do all the things, but they've got to strip that away from the people in order to control them, and that's what they're doing. Until when we can come up with a system to equip every individual with skills and capabilities, we'll always have this problem. So let's quickly go to the last one, because we can spend a lot of time on that issue, but because of the sake of time, let's do number 20.
Yes, and if we get through 20, you can say some more. So the leader is one who is so compartmentalized, belief-driven, often miseducated and indoctrinated, gleefully eager to become a puppet, muppet, warrant chief, so much so that with a certain naive innocence and near purity regurgitates what she has been spoon-fed and groomed with since birth, and as such is incapable of distinguishing nuances in tales of Christopher Columbus, Richard the Lionheart, the nose and lips chippings of statues such as the Sphinx, and many more diabolical fables and acts that have been supplanted inside his or her brain systematically over time and in space. The ethical critical thinker is one who easily understands that a Christopher Columbus could not have discovered anything, and that if anything, the people who were at the shores of those lands before him, seeing his ship arrive, are the only ones that probably discovered him, if anything. The same applies to the crest if records claim an event that has lions in things like crests happened before they actually saw a lion, then how could anyone possibly conceive in such detail a lion to add to a crest? Ooh-wee. The ethical critical thinker is critical and objective in his or her thinking, and thus understands the roles of early oppressor orchestrated archaeologist during a time of conquest, status quo, subjugation, and plunder, and is fully aware that it was not erosion that chipped away at statues such as the Sphinx, but rather it was a command action that was agreed upon, given and adhered to, then implemented by those with the capabilities to chip away specific parts. After all, even within their own societies of old, the perceived peasantry not too long ago had to get permission to simply publish their own ideas, and in most cases had to hand it over to the bourgeoisie, who then got their credit for it, and as back then classism and compartmentalized belief structures that dominated their own societies, so much so that such mindset culminated in events such as the, for well over 200 years, hunting of mere women, randomly labeled as witches by endorsement of those in leadership, authoritative positions, were in extreme full effect not too long ago here in Western history, let alone all the other maladies that took place over the historical recorded centuries.
Quickly, let's round this one up and then we can
Mouthful.
Firstly, Which leader have you ever heard if they come up and say, this myth of Christopher Columbus, we need to get rid of it? They've never done that. So that proves my point right there. Secondly, when you think about it, how many wars have taken place? And yet somebody says they're civilized. Yeah. What are wars? They're violent acts. Brutal. Look at all this, the rape, the plunder, the shooting of kids in the head, everything. And yet these same leaders have never come up publicly to say this makes no sense. We cannot classify ourselves as civilized. In fact, we're not evolving, we're devolving. And thus, we should be referring to ourselves as devolved human beings. Which one has ever said that? I think that rests my case.
And so therefore, in closing, Brother Idris, here we are.
There's not much more to say. I mean,
but the main question, what is the goal? And we are centering our community because our community is the one that has been affected by all of this. And because we have to heal ourselves, we have to heal self before we heal others. And because by default, our MwanaUbuntu African community, when it does heal itself because of who we are innately, others will heal as well. We won't even need to make effort. So what is your goal to our people, to those who look like you and I, to those who've been subjugated because they are called Black? What is your goal putting this out?
The purpose is this. We need to recognize, we need to create a new system, one that's Africanized. I don't know what you're going to call it, but you've got to find a way to, look, we are, according to them, because nobody's ever done a census, all you have is statements out there that we're 2 billion strong. What they do normally, they count the dots from the satellites that they see that represents humans. But let's just assume we're 2 billion strong. That's a phenomenal amount of people, both for a market force as well as anything that you want to do. You have a continent that has all the natural raw materials all sitting in one place to be super self-sufficient. No continent on the world comes close to Africa, and yet we are the downtrodden. We need to understand we need to do a number of things. Unification is crucial. We need to start figuring out ways how we unify. Screw your Biafra state. Screw your whatever. Screw it. All those are meaningless. Everything was formed in Berlin. Get rid of those stupid borders. Get rid of them. You see, focus your energies on how to figure out ways to get rid of those borders and give the people the freedom. Give them the room to be able to help develop themselves. And then we need to focus on defense, because the devil will always keep coming back. The devil will always keep coming back. So we need to make sure we have some system in place to defend ourselves against the devil. So that's another thing. That doesn't mean that all Europeans are evil. I didn't say that. Exactly. But unfortunately, you're led by evil. You know? And I don't think that will change. Because look at your own history. We're just a sidekick. You were brutal to yourselves long before you were brutal to us. You see? So we are not the problem. We are actually aiding your solutions.
We are the solution.
And we are the only ones that can produce an environment of humanity. But screw Europe, can't do it. Screw Latin America, can't do it. Screw Asia, can't do it. It's only Africans, because we have a uniqueness that nobody else has ever shown or done. We've survived all these atrocities. Nobody has. Yes. Nobody has.
We still kept our humanity.
And we're still catering for humanity. You see? We still look at each other and still hug people. We feel, which they can't. Many of them can't. No. So we're the solution. But don't be fooled. We're not the solution just like that. We have to make sure that we cater for that solution. We plan methodologically for that solution all around, 360 degrees. See? So our people need to stop what you do. Realize being a 9-to-5 worker means nothing. You're just a slave to the system. Spend your time, if you're doing anything at all, teach your kids the proper, don't teach them, don't miseducate them. Uneducate them from the miseducation and then re-educate them. Create systems, create educational systems, develop training content. Look, the internet is a command and control tool. It wasn't meant for this purpose, but people are using it for various things. People have got creative. So you can put that internet, even though it's a military tool, to good use and better your environment.
Yes.
And try to avoid that I thing. That I thing has to go because it's the bane of all our destruction. Look at our telecoms industry. It's because they were thinking of the I. If they were thinking of the we, they would have provided quality of service. Yes. They were thinking of the I. Look at all the constructions of roads and whatever. The only thing that has been qualitative in Africa has been buildings. But for the rest, it's all the I first, you see. So we need to change those things, and only we can do it.
I appreciate you very much. And I'm looking forward to working with you. And to my brothers and sisters globally, a call to action has been put out. Stay on alert. The time will come when you shall be called to join for us to all team and build these solutions that we're talking about and unite. Asante sana, Brother Idris. Again, thank you very much.